My mother was a heartless monster. But sometimes that's okay. I was raised by a woman with the unlikely name of Countess Fatima O'Rourke. Some would claim the Countess wasn't really my mother. And technically they would be right, I was adopted after all, but when you get deep into the soulpeopery of it all, they couldn't be more wrong. That woman, wretched old spiteful hag, was my mother in all the ways that count. So there were tears when she died. Of course. I had to take several moments when I held her eulogy. But staring down at her open casket resting bipeep face seemed to help a bit. So that's where I kept my gaze through most of it. The Countess was a cold-hearted, good-for-nothing excuse for a human being. I mumble. But I loved her. And it was true. It is true. She was heartless. Cold as an icicle shoved up a witch's tit. Human only by vague appearance. Her morbidly thin crooked face like something out of a peeping Giger painting or something. And her voice. Man. That voice. It was like someone dragging a cheese grater across barbed wire. Harsh. Relentless. Emotionless. But to the point. So you're the girl? Was her first words to me. How utterly disappointing. She showed up at the police station out of the blue. Demanding to have a look at the girl. Now, most people, white old money privileged or not, could never pull speep like that. But the Countess could. She did whatever she peeping pleased. And there wasn't a soul around stupid enough to stand in her way. Who are you? I asked. I knew who she was, of course. Everyone around these parts knew the Countess. Don't be daft. Girl. She said. You know who I am. I just nodded weakly. My gaze drawn to her sparkly shoes. So peeping sparkly. Probably worth more than a medium-sized country's national budget, those peeping shoes. She stuck a finger under my chin. Forcing it upwards. Collect your belongings. She said coldly. You're coming with me. And that's all there was to it? From that day on I was no longer Emma Fitzpatrick. I was Emma O'Rourke. The Countess' little pet project. I'm back at the eulogy now. The memory still vivid. But fading rapidly as I dry my tears. I remember the first time she hit me. I say. Came out of peeping nowhere. Sorry, not sorry, Father. Father Henderson nods in my direction. A forced smile visiting his thin lips briefly. She'd do that. You know. Wasn't abuse or anything, I guess. Just a slap across the face. Hardly even left a mark. But you knew you'd peeped up. Somehow. Some way. And that was her true power. Instilling that fear of God. Fear of Countess. Deep in your heart. I was 13 years old. A little brat. Really? But an orphan brat. Given that the police had long since stopped looking for my missing parents. And you're not supposed to discipline orphans like that. I think. She didn't peeping care though. I was in her house. Under her care. And she made damn well sure I followed every last one of her ridiculous rules down to the detail. Ow. I whined. What the peep was that for? The slap was weak. Low effort. More of a mistargeted high five against my chin than anything else. But it came from a grown-up. An adult. A countess. That speep hurts. You know. Inside you. Mind your language. Girl. She spat. And that was for this. She said. Gesticulating toward my wrinkly-ass bed sheets. Is this your idea of making a bed? If it is. Your parents failed you more than I'd originally thought. You take that back. I yelled. I will do no such thing. Girl. She grimaced sourly. Now. Get that bed sorted post-haste. O'Rourke's never leave so much as a single crumb behind to be scrutinized by our lessers. I didn't know it at the time. Still a daft brat by all intents and purposes, I suppose. But that was a sign of growing respect. She called me an O'Rourke. That was a huge peeping deal. And it took me years to realize that. Back at the eulogy. I have to take one of my many moments. The flow of constant memories resurfacing proving a bit too much. Resting open casket by peep face or not. She wasn't afraid of anyone. You know. I mumble into my handkerchief. Not even when my ass peep uncle showed up on her doorstep. Rifle at the ready and everything. Did she flinch? I hadn't seen my uncle for years. And I counted my blessings for that fact. He was a true peeping ass peep. Neck as fiery red as they come. Then one day, months after my parents' disappearance, he just shows up, demanding that the Countess hand me over. She's my peeping niece. He yelled. The nauseating stench of cheap whiskey and menthol cigarettes seeping under the cracks of the front door. The Countess had closed it firmly behind her, and told me in no uncertain terms to not move a single muscle. So that's exactly what I did. Legally speaking, perhaps, the Countess noted. Spiritually? Your species apart. What the peep are you talking about? My uncle protested wildly. Spiritually? Hand the peeping girl over right this peeping moment. Or I swear. He didn't need to complete the sentence. The rifle doing all the talking from that point on, I suspect. Still, the Countess didn't back down. I'm not sure if she even knew how to. Get off my porch. You filthy hoodlum. I heard her say. Or you'll find my wrath vastly unproportional to your social standing. Minutes went by in dead silence. In my mind I like to believe she somehow stared him down. She could do that. You know. A single stare. Targeted. Amplified. Of which would force you to your knees. I remember vividly the violent sound of an engine revving. And screeching tires as my uncle left the property. Well then. The Countess said, closing the door behind her as she sauntered back in nonchalantly. I don't think we'll be seeing any more of that unseemly character. The eulogy is a sad affair. I think to myself. Not just for obvious reasons. You know. A person's death. But because I know. Deep down. That no one really cared for the Countess. They're all a bunch of peeping leeches. Here for the public appearance. The promise of a quick payout. The free drinks at the door. Nothing more. If they only knew. She hated you all. You know. I whisper. Just low enough for most of them to miss it. To her. You were ants. Sheeps. Inconsequential amoebas she was forced to interact with. Especially you. Chief Monroe. She kept telling me how much she loathed you. I'm sorry. Chief Monroe. And by extension the entirety of the police force. Were woefully incompetent. The Countess would tell me repeatedly. Not only are they unlikely to ever find your parents. She said. But they failed utterly in their task to find my little one too. All those years ago. I knew the Countess wasn't always some ancient dried up spinster. That she was once married. Had a little daughter. That she was happy, unbelievable as that may seem given the now heartless, barbed wire mouth state of her. She was showing me how to properly care for her azaleas. And she must have noticed the tears streaming down my face. I don't know why I was crying exactly. But it would happen around garden flowers a lot. I knew that much. My Penelope deserved better. She said. A sudden, almost unnoticeable sadness carrying her voice. That's why it's so important. Emma. She continued. That we rid ourselves of dependencies. There's only one person in this world you can trust. Girl. And that person is yourself. The eulogy drags on. My handkerchief is soaking wet. And I can't hold back the tears. Not a single one of them dare meet my gaze. Heads kept low in awkward silence. I hated her. You know. For years. I just couldn't fathom why she kept me around. The scoldings. The slaps. Her cold. Emotionless eyes. But then one night. A night just like the rest of them, nothing special about it, she decided to show me. Show me the truth. Emma. She demanded. Dragging me out of bed. Get your wits about you, girl. And follow me. Don't say a word. And stay behind me at all times. Knowing the Countess, I just nodded. And shuffled behind her diligently. Like some kind of strange pajama-clad teenage girl soldier. What I'm about to show you can never leave these walls. She whispered in a hushed tone. And though it will raise many questions, I need you to remain patient. You will feel things. Hate. Sadness. Fear. Do not let them get the best of you. You are strong. Girl. And it's about time you showed them that. I followed her down the stairs. And into her study, a place I wasn't really allowed to be in. But I snuck in there from time to time anyway. To marvel at the vast collection of first editions. And play with the antique letter opener that kinda looked like a little ornate dagger. She stopped by her sizable mahogany desk, a gift from her late husband, and stood there silently. Idly stroking the smooth surface for minutes. Normally. She started. Her voice low. Murmury. You'd expect some kind of hidden mechanism in a place like this. Pull on a book. Turn a knob. Something to that effect. She turned to face me. Her gaze flickering unsteadily. Like she wasn't sure what to say or do next. But in real life, things are exceedingly simple. Complicated on the surface. Yes. But when you peel away all those layers, the remaining core is often a single, effortless truth. With a swift motion, she kicked aside the rug on the floor, revealing underneath what appeared to be an old trapdoor. Simple, she said. Alone. Unassuming layer is sometimes all it takes. Why, what's down there? I asked. She grabbed me by the shoulders with both hands. I've told you already. Girl. She said. A cold stare into my eyes. Truth. The trapdoor opened with remarkable ease. A single pull. And we were greeted by a ramshackle ladder descending into the dark unknown. You're peeping mental if you think for a moment I'm going down there. I sneered. The Countess laughed. It's strange. You know. That's the first time I'd ever heard her laugh. Don't ever change. Emma O'Rourke. She snorted in between strained chuckles. But you're coming with me all the same. Weird as it was, I was also peeping amazed at how easily her 60-something body made its way down that ladder. Don't get me wrong. The Countess was imposing in her own way. But she was lithe, her frail frame withered down by age and ceaseless worry. And so I followed her into the darkness. Moments later finding myself in a dimly lit cellar. Strangely unbecoming of the Countess. There was dirt. Cracked stone walls. Flickering lamps. And that's when I met them again. I say. Back now at the church again. My eyes wandering from person to person. I can tell they are uncomfortable. Shifting in their seats restlessly. My parents. Couldn't recognize them at first. Of course. She fed them maybe every other week. Nothing but skin and bones. Really? Pus-filled wounds covering filthy naked bodies. The sight of them peeping overwhelmed me. I don't mind admitting. It was like a punch to the gut. And it quickly sent me doubling over to the ground. I figured it was about time you three got acquainted. The Countess said darkly. Emma. Meet the Fitzpatricks. Fitzpatricks. This is my daughter. Emma O'Rourke. Emma. My mother muttered. Her pained voice barely audible. Her eyes were a deep shade of red. Drool and snot dribbling down her morbidly skinny face in thick streams. Like my father. She was shackled to the wall, hanging limply from big old peeping medieval chains. Wah. I stammered incoherently. Gaze shifting back and forth from one tormented parent to the next. Geraldine. James. The Countess said. I demand your undivided attention. Emma here came looking for the truth. And I firmly believe you owe her that? My father's body shook and trembled as he struggled to raise his head. Don't listen to her. Emma. He whispered hoarsely. She's a lying peeping by peep. Oh. Am I now? James Virgil Fitzpatrick? The Countess hissed. Tell me then. Truthfully. Is Emma here your biological daughter? I stared at him intently. Yes. He said. Lies. The Countess roared. Your degenerate brain wouldn't be able to spill the truth even if I nailed it to the wall and cut it open, a solution I am not above considering, mind you. Emma. My mother pleaded. Pooh, please help us. Enough of this. The Countess grabbed me by the wrist and hoisted me up to my feet effortlessly. She's heard enough. Come now. Girl. Leave the vermin to rot in the darkness where they belong. I drop my handkerchief. And as it hits the wooden floor, a resounding sloop cuts through the dead silence of the church. What I did next is the reason why we're here. Isn't it? I put my trust in the wrong place. I didn't heed her advice. Never trust anyone but yourself. My gut told me to leave. To get the thief out of there. But my father. My mother. The keys were right there. Just sitting on a speepty wooden table. That's not something the Countess would ever purchase. My mind noted weirdly. As I snatched them up without the Countess noticing. I let her ascend the ladder almost to the top before I made my move. Father. I said. Quickly returning to him with the keys. Hang on. I'll get you out of there. I fumbled with the lock for what felt like an eternity. The peeping keys never quite lining up correctly. There. I sighed in relief. A sharp click followed by the loosening of chains, leaving us catching our breath in silence. My father scrambled to his feet unsteadily. A look in his eyes I couldn't quite place. But I'd definitely seen somewhere before. Get the thief out of my way. Girl. He snarled. I'm gonna kill that peeping by peep. No. Do I started? My weak attempt at holding him back woefully futile. Even starved and abused for months. Years. He was still twice my size. He flung me into the wall like I was nothing. And began the climb after the Countess. You know. I say. Gaze drifting again to the open casket. I think she knew I'd do that. On some level. Peeping crazy old by peep. But she knew exactly what she was doing. My father caught up to her in the study. And I don't think I could have stopped him. Even if it hadn't taken me God peeping forever to climb that ladder. I heard the screams and the discordant sounds of bookshelves toppling over. But my shivering fingers failed to grip the ladder properly. And I slipped down it again and again. When I finally surfaced, my father had the Countess on her back. His hands wrapped around her neck in a tight squeeze. I knew where it was without even looking. The letter opener? It felt heavy in my hand. Tiny little peeping thing. So bizarre. Is it sharp enough? I kept thinking. Knowing the Countess though, I had a feeling she sharpened it every night. On the off chance she needed to stab some lowlife to death with it. Like. For instance. Right that peeping moment. I say. Closing my eyes. I don't want them to see me like this. Stay strong. Emma. Pull yourself together. I don't know how many times I stabbed him. You know. Who the peep would count something like that? 1 stab. 2 stab. Nice stab. Cool stab. All I know is that I kept at it until he stopped moving. And the floor was wet with blood. Countess. I sniffled. Trying my best to push my father off of her. Mother. Emma. She wheezed faintly. Her once icy cold gaze now soft and strangely present. Emma. You did it. You didn't let the fear in. You stayed strong. I am so proud of you. A sudden realization hit me then. And I wrapped my arms around her in a tight embrace. I started. The words not quite making their way from mind to mouth. Am I Penelope? She smiled then, however briefly, before the pain returned. I don't know. She said. I truly don't know. But I know this one simple truth. Unlayered and uncomplicated. You are my daughter. Her body was broken. My father's hate and violence having done too much damage to her lithe frame. She was dying. And we both knew it. Top left drawer of my desk. She gasped. It has a false bottom. Simple. Expected. You will find all the answers there. I'm scared. Mother. I said, resting my head on her shoulder. She coughed painfully. That's a waste of your fear. Girl. She said. Fear only what you cannot overcome. And you will find there's little at all to fear. She passed away seconds later. And I will live by her last words forever. You peeping vultures wouldn't understand. You fear everything. You feared what I'd find in that drawer. You feared what I'd do with the truth. You fear me even now. Yet I've made sure the world will never learn what happened here. You fear me because I let my fake mother rot and die in that godless hole under the study. All you do is fear. The Countess had kept herself busy after her daughter had disappeared. She said it herself. The police did peep all. And over the years she'd figured out exactly why. But before opening that particular can of worms, she had to deal with a domestic issue. As she so elegantly put it in her notes. Peeping crazy old by peep. You know how it went by now. Maybe you knew from the start. The ransom letters to the Count. The ones he refused to acknowledge. Or even show to his wife. Poor little Penelope. Not even worth half her weight in gold in that speepty old bastard's eyes. You all suspected it. I figure. That she peeping killed him. Could never prove it though. And even if you could, I don't think a single one of you would have the balls to do anything about it. It's getting hard to concentrate. But we're at the final stretch now. Soon I will be free. Maybe for the first time ever. And it's all because of you. You demented old hag? All because of you. Mother. My parents had been doing it for years. Kidnapping innocent children of the filthy rich. Ransoming their way to a small fortune. That they continued to piss away on drugs and alcohol and all the peeping cliches. But what happened to all the Penelopes? To the little ones with parents who couldn't peeping bother to part with their wealth? You guessed it. You knew it. Buried in the back garden. Under rose bushes. Azaleas. The peeping weeds. Dozens of tiny bones and skulls. Beautiful lives never lived because of them. Because of you. The screams sort of take me out of the moment. But I can handle it. Am I one of them? Am I Penelope? In truth. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you. All of you. Helped them cover that speep up. Money for silence. So easy. So simple. No real layers to it. A core of corruption and greed. I'm so glad you all made it here. Though. That you accepted her invitation. That you guzzled down that welcome drink. Strychnine poisoning is some seriously peeped up speep. I read about it extensively before I planned the service. Easily accessible. Horribly painful. Doesn't take that much effort either. Simple. You were all on the Countess list. Even you. Father Henderson. A man of God indeed. You've peeped up. Didn't you? This is what happens. You know. When you've peeped with the Countess. A wrath vastly unproportional to your social standing. I stepped down among the writhing masses. A few of them desperately attempting to crawl toward the exit. But failing miserably as the crippling spasms set in. In closing. I say. Head held high. Proud posture of a countess. Peep you all. On my way out I must have accidentally knocked over one of the live candles by the entrance. Speep happens. You know. Just the way of things. I find the sight of the roaring inferno strangely calming though. Now that all the screams have died out. Rest in peace. Countess Fatima O'Rourke. You were my mother. And you were also a cold. Heartless monster by peep. But only when you needed to be. And sometimes. That's okay. TCC. Leave a like and a comment if you liked the video. Check out more Reddit related video. I am posting them daily. Subscribe to see more Reddit content.